Every story of conversion is a story of blessed defeat. The 29th of November, 1898. A boy is born to Albert and Florence Lewis in Belfast, Ireland. This boy would grow up to achieve massive academic achievements, to become a veteran of the Great War, to become one of the best-selling authors of all time, and even to become the greatest English-speaking theologian that ever lived. C.S. Lewis would grow up in a family of avid readers. Education was paramount to the Lewises. In those days when it was less common for women to be in academia, Lewis's mother had earned a degree from the Royal University of Ireland. Young Lewis began reading from as young as 3 and writing stories from as young as 5 years old. Growing up, his family attended the Church of Ireland, but it would be at the age of 14 that he would become an atheist. In young adulthood, atheistic Lewis would serve in the British Army in the First World War. His service would take him from November of 1917 to April of 1918, when where he served in France he sustained wounds which met the conditions for him to go home. Upon returning home and taking back up his studies, Lewis continued his intellectual journey, earning degrees in English and literature in a third of the usual time. About this time, he would join a circle of friends, which included the theological giga-titan himself, J.R.R. Tolkien. These years would see Lewis searching for ways to tear down Christianity, when all of his arguments he found refuted by himself or others. The surprising historical accuracy of the Gospels, the argument from morality, the principles of cause and effect. Though he desperately thought himself the intellectual to disprove Christianity, he found himself the loser. Lewis's philosophical journey took him back to theism in 1930 and back to Christianity in 1931. This is typically credited to his own philosophical questioning, but also in great part it was thanks to J.R.R. Tolkien, although the credit may truly belong to neither.
Scholars, I have, with considerable resistance, come to believe in God, but not Christianity.
No, Jack.
I cannot believe something I do not understand. How can the life and death of someone else, whoever he was, 2,000 years ago, help us in the here and now?
When you meet a god sacrificing himself in a pagan story like Dionysus, Balder, Osiris, or even in a fairy tale, you like it very much and are mysteriously moved by it, provided you meet it anywhere except in the Gospels. Well, the story of Christ is a myth, working on us in the same way as other myths, with one tremendous difference in that it really happened.
Suddenly, a rush of wind interrupted us, startling me. So many leaves fell to the ground, I thought it was raining. I held my breath.
Come on, Jack, you're too slow to catch a cold. You know Dyson hates sitting on those steps waiting to be let in.
The wind blows where it wishes, and you hear its sound, but you do not know where it comes from or where it goes. So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit. Lewis would not join Tolkien as a member of the Catholic Church, however, but would instead ascribe membership to the Church of England. What did Tolkien explain to Lewis that persuaded him to Christianity but not to Catholicism? Tolkien never wrote about philosophy or theology, yet was secretly experienced enough to have had a hand in persuading the greatest English-speaking theologian back to Christianity. As is very stereotypical of Tolkien, he preferred to leave some things a mystery. Every story of conversion is a story of blessed defeat. At last, Lewis had taken on the form we all revere him as having today. In 1933, Lewis published one of his more famous pieces of fiction, Out of the Silent Planet. In 1940 and 1942, he published The Problem of Pain and The Case for Christianity. And in 1942, he would publish what would go on to be his second most successful book ever, The Screwtape Letters. Though I had never written anything more easily, I never wrote with less enjoyment. The book is a series of letters written by a demon named Screwtape to his nephew, Wormwood. There are two equal and opposite errors into which our race can fall about the devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence, the other is to believe and to feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them. Wormwood is a junior tempter assigned by the Father Below to tempt a human in the United Kingdom. In the very first chapter, what you might expect to be an epic conclusion occurs immediately. Wormwood's patient becomes a Christian. Lewis's angle from the first letter is that the life of a Christian is not one free from evil temptation. Screwtape advises Wormwood to make his patient a connoisseur of churches and to go shopping for the right wine.
Get in, loser, we're going going shopping.
Through this chapter of the Screwtape Letters, one can infer the reason that Lewis didn't Catholic church where Tolkien attended. It's the role of the attendee to make a difference in the church, serving God in his church rather than God serving you in his church. Screwtape teaches Wormwood that the humans want to think that the demons fill their brains with evil thoughts.
They pack away at my mind!
When just as maliciously, the demons like for humans to avoid certain thoughts, especially and most importantly, remembering to pray. The demons have no control over what God says to the humans in prayer. Their best bet is making humans forget it entirely. The greatest sin of man is the sin of pride, because all other sin comes from it. Screwtape is no absolutist and is happy to make concessions. When a human has resisted the temptation of sexual sin, it is all the more to the delight of the demons if the human boasts in this, lest they thank God instead of themselves. World War II breaks out, but to our surprise, Screwtape is blissfully impartial to this war. Wormwood's patient, if killed during the war, would almost certainly be lost to them. It would be far more to the benefit of the demons if a human's lifespan was dragged along for long, miserable years. Screwtape's letters to Wormwood cease when Wormwood's patient dies, and does not end up joining the Father below. Lewis's book is esteemed by theologians to this day. However, the book presumes the reader is a Christian. In these early days of Christianity, which is more crucial, the sharing of the gospel, or an interdenominational bickering over theology. Thus logically followed the crowning jewel of Lewis's career, Mere Christianity. Originally, the book was a series of talks delivered by Lewis over the radio during World War II, which were reorganized into this book.
The Christian life is simply a process of having your natural self changed into a Christ self.
Which is more logical, that everything in existence came from something, or that it all came from nothing? If every cause has an effect, does that necessitate a first and eternal cause? It makes more sense that God exists than that he doesn't. Now, if God does exist, science tells us that he stranded us on an itty-bitty rock in the middle of nowhere. We are vastly less powerful than he, making God our greatest fear and our only hope. Had World War II wiped out civilization beyond repair and scientists many years in the future observed the rubble, science might tell them what is and what was, but it is incapable of telling them what should or should not have been. Morality tells us that there is such a thing as right and wrong. How exactly we have that sense probably has something to do with God. As you play the piano to a piece of sheet music, you have violated the rules when you play a note which is not on the sheet. Sexual pleasure is not inherently wrong, but there are a great many contexts in which it is wrong. We are aware of morality, yet all of us realize that we have not adhered totally to morality. When you love someone, you will not force them into doing something. This God who wrote morality onto our hearts also allows us to break it. For whatever reason, this God actually loves us. It is plain that we have all violated morality and have no way of making amends for this. We are in desperate need of a savior. Of all the world's religions, all save one dictate the actions and the rituals, which you must participate in to please God. Christianity tells of a God coming to us and saving us on our behalf, a savior. And without citing a word from the Bible, Lewis's Mere Christianity maps out the most compelling philosophical case for Christianity ever written in the English language. Lewis comments on the importance of marriage in this book, yet calls himself out as being unable to speak from experience. Lewis was 45 years of age the year Mere Christianity was published, yet he remained the singlest of Pringles. Meanwhile, his buddy in J.R.R. Tolkien had been married to his wife Edith Tolkien since 24 years of age. Someday, you will be old enough to start reading fairy tales again. 1950 rolled around, and Lewis published the best-selling book of his life, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Do not cite the deep magic to me, witch. I was there when it was written.
An epic simple story of 4 siblings falling into a wardrobe with a secret land inside, ruled by an evil witch. One of the siblings, Edmund, went to the witch and was in desperate need of rescuing. Aslan gives his life in place of Edmund, who did not deserve it. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is a direct metaphor for Christianity and the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross. This same year, Lewis would receive a letter, noteworthy enough to remark it to his brother at the time, from an American woman, Joy Davidman. Legend has it that Joy Davidman would look at a Chopin score as a young girl, and then turn around and play it on the piano without another glance at the score. Joy grew up in a Jewish household in New York. In 1942, Joy Joy married William Lindsay Gresham at the age of 27. Together they would have 2 sons, David and Douglas. Joy's husband was an alcoholic, and on more than one occasion was physically abusing Joy and their boys. Gresham left for long periods of time and openly admitted his affairs, until eventually telling Joy he was in love with someone else and that he may never return.
You dumb, stupid, weak, pathetic, white, milquetoast piece of human garbage.
The night of receiving this news, Joy entered the room where her sons slept, alone in the darkness with all of her fear. For the first time, my pride was forced to admit that I was not, after all, the master of my fate. All my defenses, all the walls of arrogance and cocksureness and self-love behind which I had hid from God, went down momentarily, and God came in. It is infinite, unique. There are no words. There are no comparisons. Those who have known God will understand me. There was a person with me in that room, directly present to my consciousness. A person so real that all my previous life was by comparison mere shadow play. And I myself was more alive than I had ever been. It was like waking from sleep. Every story of conversion is a story of blessed defeat. At this moment, she concluded that God exists, an experience-based conversion as opposed to Lewis's philosophical. She returned to studying Judaism, but was unsatisfied with what she found. She discovered the writings of C.S. Lewis, and began with 3 of his books in particular: The Great Divorce, Miracles, and The Screwtape Letters. Her fascination and spiritual satisfaction she found in Lewis's writing inspired her to read the Bible, and namely the Gospels. According to her testimony, the person who was with her in that dark room was the same person who was the subject of the Gospels. Through a mutual connection, Joy would first write to Lewis regarding her thoughts on his books in 1950. Later that year, she sailed to Great Britain, where she and Lewis would meet and work together on finishing Joy's book, Smoke on the Mountain. Their love was forbidden because she was a divorcee, but the two fell for one another nevertheless. She took her sons with her to Oxford and lived in a home near Lewis. When Joy's visa neared expiration, Lewis and Joy married in a quiet civil ceremony so that she could continue legally living in the United Kingdom. The Church of England, however, refused to administer the sacrament of marriage to Lewis and Joy because of Joy's divorce, so the legally married couple lived apart. Until 1957, when Joy fell terminally ill with cancer. Lewis called in a favor from a priest to come to the hospital, with the doctors saying Joy had days to weeks to live. The priest officially married Lewis and Joy. With Lewis's brother and a hospital staff member as witnesses, Joy became Mrs. C.S. Lewis. Mrs. Lewis, to everyone's amazement, made an incredible recovery, and for 3 years the cancer subsided. Eventually, however, the cancer returned and Joy died in 1960 after a 10-year relationship and a 3-year marriage with Lewis.
I knew it was you. The whole time, I knew it. But the others didn't believe me.
And why would that stop you from coming to me?
I'm sorry. Why wouldn't you show yourself? Why couldn't you come roaring in and save us like last time?
Things never happen the same way twice, dear one.
Lewis finished the Chronicles of Narnia and finished other books like Till We Have Faces and The Four Loves, which would have looked differently without Joy's influence. The final book Lewis would publish before his death in 1963 came out under a pen name, N.W. Clerk, A Grief Observed. The book is a series of writings from Lewis reflecting on his feelings after Joy died. The chapters wildly differ, from one being a raging fit of writing from deep in the night, and another a joyful reflection of the beauty of Joy's life. Christianity tries to offer such assurance of dead Christians being in heaven, but Lewis admits that he could not be certain where Joy actually was. He would not say his Christian convictions were distorted, but he questioned them. Finally, C.S. Lewis died on November 22nd, 1963. So where would we be today without C.S. Lewis? Without a doubt, there would be less Christians. Joy would not have become Christian without Lewis's writing. People like myself who have never had an experience like Joy's might be passively sitting with both thumbs planted firmly up our butts, waiting for some kind of supernatural enlightenment. So is Tolkien the hero of our story who helped convert Lewis? No. Is Lewis the hero? No. The hero of Lewis's story is the same hero of Tolkien's. The hero is the one who actually defeats us all. Every story of conversion is a story of blessed defeat.